Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. So let's just get into it. Yesterday, my husband went fishing and was gone most of the day, which is great. I did my thing. I had leftover steak. I felt tired right afterwards, and I just took a major nap, and woke up a little bit groggy. Definitely had to blow my nose this morning, like a lot. I mean, when you can feel like when I wanted to sleep in, it was like around 5 or so or 6, and I wanted to sleep in and my nose was just filling up with stuff. Then I'm like, okay, I have to get up and I have to release, because I know that there's release down there that has to be done. That's why my body is forcing me to release up here. And so these two parts of my system speak to each other, and I must release the demons. And so yes, blowing my nose a lot, then it makes everything down there come out as well. And so then I'm like, and I feel also a little bit of pain in the back of my neck, nothing major, but I can feel like a little bit of stiffness. And so I know that there is a lot of energy shifts in the environment, particle acceleration, and that causes growth and bloom and instability. And then it also will cause your body to develop more particles, and then your body also has to release. And you're going to be tired, and also eat. But I didn't eat so much last night. I think I made spaghetti, and I ate a little bit of spaghetti after that other meal of the steak in the middle of the afternoon, like for lunch. And so that was enough food for me. And so yesterday I was thinking about, like, after, in between my last transmission and then taking a nap, and even just last night, I was thinking about what religion has done to people, what politics, religion, science has done to people, as far as embedding a self-destruct religion, a self-destruct protocol. And you know that your mind is what develops everything out there. Your mind develops your world. Your mind develops everything. Because once you put your mind to it, you'll make it happen if you have all the tools and techniques, and you have the capability and the environment to do it in. And so we know when we embed certain types of words in people's speech patterns, and that is like casting spells on people when there's hidden meanings behind some of these words and some of these poems and quotes. And so then of course your friends and your family and politics, religion, science reinforce the programming, whatever it is. And so when I say religion equals you only have one life and that's it, well, that's a brainwashing. That's a religion when someone says you only have one life and that's it. But some people are too far gone that they cannot at all even attempt to gain the access to the second life and the third life and the fourth life that they could potentially have access to. And so with that brainwashing then comes a culture, a lifestyle, and a belief system. And then you see people will actually promote their own demise. Okay? And that's a pretty hefty concept to figure out, is that your mind is what develops everything. And when you allow somebody else to dictate your lifestyle, your belief system, your politics, your religion, your science, then yeah, they will program you any way they want to program you. And if you don't have discernment over that, if you don't understand that's what's going on, yeah, somebody else will program you to be their minion and to also destroy you as they are taking resources away from you. And so then I was realizing that as far as the collagen and the meat and the milk and the cheese and the eggs and all the things that you need to eat, and you need the gluten and all that, the sugar and the salt. And then I remember being in San Francisco, living in San Francisco, and eating all the different fusion foods and all the exotic foods and the vegan foods and the vegetarian foods. and all the spicy, spicy foods. And so exotic foods equals nutritionally deficient. It's a trendy death process. So when you see people that are posting their pictures of their gardens that has a whole bunch of vegetables, and that's pretty much it, vegetables, and they're not really eating meat except for once in a while or a little bit, and they're having an issue with lactose, with milk or cream, yeah, they're still into that exotic, trendy death lifestyle. That's the thing is a lot of Californians that are like in the trendy, like in the inner cities, and they're eating just the sushi, which sushi's not bad, but I'll say the vegetarian dishes. I mean, even when I said I don't go to Indian restaurants anymore. I do not eat Indian food anymore, because the last time I went and ate Indian food, I felt like I was drunk because of how many spices there were in that food. It was so crazy. I caused so much of a growth. Like I was being taken over. I was possessed. That's what the exotic food does with all the spices. Spicy, spicy. It develops more offspring. Remember, antibiotic, probiotic. You are probiotic. The spicy food is antibiotic. Then you have some nutrition, and then you get all this growth, which is okay on some level, but you're pretty much not... you start a war in your body, because you still have a regular body that needs to be fed milk and the meat and the cheese and the eggs and all that stuff, but you're bringing in an enemy that is developing offspring. That's what's crazy with all the spicy, spicy foods. And if you have a shitty ass release process, then you're harboring the enemy inside. Then that's the aging process. When you go to India, when you go to these different really spicy countries that have all the spicy, spicy food, then you see all the religions come from that. Then you see a lot of people, a lot of offspring, a lot of bodies in deficit. So that the exotic food is nutritionally deficient. Abso-fucking-lutely. And it's a trendy death process, because let me tell you, that was one of the major things in San Francisco, was eating the trendy food. There's hardly anything to it, and it was exotic, and it was just like, it was, yeah. And when you think about like the English food, Scottish food, the Appalachian food, the Midwest food, it's fucking substantial food for hardy, substantial people. But you also have to bring in the intellect along with a substantial body. And then you have to bring those two worlds together. Because we have a lot of people who are really intellectual in California, but they don't have really the body to support it. But there are a lot of brain, but not a lot of body, unless you're like in the blue collar field and you're working on the highways, right? I've met some blue collar people in California, but then there's the cannabis, because then the deficits and the deficiencies come in. And then people are under the influence a lot. Okay. But then you go to the Midwest, like here in Ohio, and it's a lot of body. I'm not saying there's no brains. There's definitely brains here. But the majority of the people that I hang out with, it's a lot of body, hardworking people. And they have to have meat, milk, cheese, eggs. They can't live on fucking vegetarians, exotic vegan and vegetarian bullshit. No, they would die in that. So this part of the country, and it's a hardy body country, because it gets cold. And then the economy, it is the steel industry. It is factories here. It is, you have, the football and the bar fights and a lot of alcoholics too. Okay. So anyway, so experiencing the two sides of the country that I've experienced, not so much going from like California to New York, because that's the same thing, but California to Ohio, completely different world, fucking completely different world. All right. And so then you have to understand that in my book, I've mentioned that tardigrades and hydra are what makes up your body, mind, and spirit. And so I said, you are 69 trillion of microbes that have their colonies and their cultures. And so, yeah, you have tardigrade in you, and you also have hydra. And not because they put it in you with a V. No, you are hydra, and you are a tardigrade. What are hydra? You're water. You're a percentage of water. Water has hydra, has energy. It has microbes. It has life. Water is fucking life. Okay? And so the tardigrades and the hydra. Tardigrades are these little water bears. They're microscopic, and they have little hands. I think there's like, what, 6 hands they have? And each end, there's an end that has a little thing like your sphincter that goes in and out, and they have a nose or a mouth that goes in and out like your sphincter. That's how your sphincter works. If you look at a tardigrade breathing underwater when you watch those Facebook reels, right? So the tardigrades and the hydra are a marriage of life and biodiversity. You are 69 trillion of hydra and tardigrade marriage, and attacking them with oncology tinctures, starvation herbs is the destruction of you. You have been poorly misinformed about what you are comprised of. You were fed stories and feared to depopulate you at your own hand as you sign on the dotted line against your life. And that's when you are engaging with a naturopathic, a homeopathic, an MLMer who is sending you all their different tinctures and all that stuff. You sign on the dotted line when you have taken on insurance that when you feel something, you're going straight to the doctor and getting something surgically taken out. You're getting something sucked out with a machine, or you're getting something like a prescription drug or an over-the-counter drug, or you're given access to cannabis so you can either be under the influence so you don't feel stuff, or you stop the body from releasing or retaining. All right? And so you have, at your own hand, you are destroying yourself through the medical, holistic, energy, healing, all that world. And so then you think about what the stories like in Indiana Jones, and you saw, I think it was the Aztec Empire and the human sacrifice. You see all the witch hunts. I mean, back in the 1700s during the Salem witch trials. Oh gosh. Throwing virgins in volcanoes. The Incas in Peru doing the giving people certain kind of drugs so they stay under the influence so they can sacrifice them. Because all that human sacrifice was to control the population because the gods were angry. There was too many people. And so when there's too many people, it caused a lot of disease and caused a lot of stuff. And so then you had to lessen the population so you didn't have so many people scrapping for the same thing and or at each other's throats. So modern day human sacrifice, right, is programming people in a specific way, punishing them for acting out their programming. Okay, so now since we are in a civilized society, we don't want to live by the laws of the jungle. Hence the New World Order speech from George Herbert Walker Bush. I think that's what his last name is, or first name, or middle name. We are now the law of the law, like law and order, not the law of the jungle. And so now we are programming human depopulation, human sacrifice, and we're watching people act out their programming. And so even deadly punishments when they can't control their demons were given to them at birth, even in utero. Who's them? People who act out their programming. Or even during state-sanctioned human sacrificing, like wars. You must understand, or surgeries, you must understand the games that are being played. You must beat the game in a legal way. The system desires to have deadly entertainment for the masses who are bloodthirsty. Well, go look at football games and MMA and all those different sports where it's like hockey. To satisfy the bloodlust, they must program people in a specific way, and they must understand the game. And if you can't get your demons under control, you will be the subject of the game. Be careful out there, okay? They turned up the heat and the game is on. So yeah, everyone has been programmed in specific ways, and then bodies in deficit, then they have the wars, you have the gangs, you have the drugs, you have all the different cults and religions and politics and science dogmas. Oh yeah, so many different players of the game when you think about it. Like, let me say Monopoly or Dungeons and Dragons. Everyone has been programmed in a specific way, and now the system is watching to see who is going to act out their programming and who is going to try to get control of their programming. And that's what all these self-help agencies are like, okay, if we can intellectually program your mind, maybe we can get you to act and overrun your programming with your mind. But people forget that their gut is what really has the memories. And so over time, even the mind can't overrun the gut because the gut's in control. And so that's why electroshock therapy was really a horrible thing, because you can't just Yeah, you can erase someone's mind and turn them into a freaking vegetable, a zombie. That's what these sanitariums had when they were doing those experiments, thinking that they could control the mind, control someone's proclivities, their desires, or depression through electroshock therapy. No, you have to release those demons. To put electricity to someone's brain to that level, turn them, yes, into zombies, into Frankensteins, into vegetables. And that's what happens so many times out there when they're trying to figure out how to control people and control their proclivities, to control everything. Okay? But I figured out how you can control all that bullshit. You have to release those demons. You have to feed yourself. That's how you're going to breed out predation out of your body and your mind and your spirit, is you have to be the one to release that. No one can force you to release the programming out of your body, mind, and spirit. They can try to, intellectualize you and brainwash you. And people do. But then people realize that there's brainwashing going on and they resist it. And then both people are resisting each other. And that's where destruction happens. Resistance is futile. All right? And so now we're saying, okay, now we're in the alien agenda. All right? And the alien agenda is probably being laid out right now. We already have the whole alien stuff, their sightings and all that. Then we have potentially crisis actors popping up here and there saying they're seeing shit, seeing shapeshifters. And so what if, again, crisis actors, right? What if there are real live actors pretending to have a meltdown on a plane or anywhere else to plant seeds of aliens and shapeshifters? You don't know now anything. You never knew anything. You just were told to believe whatever you saw, whether it's on Facebook, on TV, mainstream media, alternative mainstream media. And if you don't have discernment, even what you see, like I saw it like through my Facebook Live here. Sometimes I'll see little orbs. I don't see them all the time, but you guys can see them too. So we both can see the orbs through the electronic means. But when I'm looking outside, you don't know if you're seeing Hollywood or if you're seeing an actual alien shapeshifter. You don't know what the fuck you're seeing out there. So even question what you see through the naked eye. You don't know what you're seeing. And we know biotech can make people look kind of crazy. And we know hybrids have been out there. And of course, they're not going to be circulating out there because someone will destroy them because out of fear. So what if they're introducing the alien agenda and saying, okay, if aliens exist, I don't say they're aliens, but they're just people with different race of people, different humanoid type people that want to be able to integrate and have a diverse society, and they have to live among each other. And so what if you introduce diversity, whether it's Hollywood or some shape-shifting thing, and then people get used to seeing that, and then they realize that there is a world of different species out there in the universe. I wouldn't call them aliens, but you're going to have to transition people who have been homogenized into seeing something diverse. Okay. And so, I mean, in my book, I mentioned about sexuality and where sexuality comes from, right? And people have an issue with alternative sexuality based upon a homogenized thought process about sexual reproduction and men and women and gender. And so then there's the alternative, there's the LGBTQ, which is now mainstreamed, okay? And then what's now alternative to LGBTQ? Then there's people who have objectification, objectophilia, where they're in love with objects or inanimate objects. Then there's that, okay? And so, but then let's get away from sexuality for a minute, and then let's get into just diversity, what you look like, how you look like. Some people purposely disfigure themselves so they look different. So, okay, what if people are born disfigured and functional and intellectual, but they have just different phenotypical characteristics? Would that be okay? As long as they were like, between 4 foot, 5 foot, all the way to 6 or 7 foot. But when you get someone who is taller than 6 or 7 foot, then do you think the infrastructure could accommodate people who are like 8 or 9 feet tall? Even a 7 foot, 6'7" or 7 foot person who has a hard time functioning I mean, being able to function with people who are average height of like 6 foot or 5 foot. Okay, so, or 7, yeah, I mean, so you'd have to have the infrastructure accommodate the size of people, but if they look different phenotypical characteristics, then would you be able to handle that? And so at this point, I don't really know what the deal is. I really don't. So let's just let things unfold. All right. And so the whole world is a stage now, right? It's not hard to have coordinated outbursts. You don't know who people are. Remember, you don't know what people are or what people see or do not see. Even what you see, you have no idea what you saw. So unless you're in danger, control your reactions and emotions and have discernment. Okay. All right, so let me get to this last part here. This is going to be a short video because I'm just like, you can kind of hear in my voice a little bit. I don't say I'm tired, but I just feel like I'm under some kind of weird fog. But I want to get this information out because it's like, wow. And I do feel a little bit pain in the back of my neck. And so there's definitely something going on in the universe. And I feel the particle acceleration. So the issue with Universe 25. So what is Universe 25? It was an experiment done between the 1950s and 1970s, where you had 3,000 mice, and it was done in a certain amount of time, maybe 25 times, I forget. But John B Calhoun developed an experiment where you had 3,000 mice, and it was all a utopian society. It had food, it had water, it had space, it had a certain amount of mice, and then he watched them go through the process of a utopian to then all-out extinction. And they did that experiment several times, and it was always ending up in extinction. He bred predation out of it, and disease. So there's no predation, no disease in that population, but they kept reproducing. They kept having sex with each other, and there was a population incline, and then there was a decline, and then all extinction. So the issue with Universe 25, why it ended up in extinction, they kept reproducing so many bodies in deficit. Even though predation and disease was bred out of the population, sexually reproducing continuously weakens the genetic line. And just by the very nature of deficit makes you a predator trying to become whole again. Okay, so that's why when our society is now built on sexuality and everyone getting off sexually, you are actually releasing your body into the universe. You are actually destroying yourself as you become even more predatory in your sexual exploits, as well as having a bunch of children, having a big family, and also looking for someone to release your demons, but not the demons like the demons that will help you, the demons that will be released to help you become whole again. No, people are releasing children, or they are releasing the semen. The men are releasing so much semen that their life is being literally sucked out of them. That's why I say beautiful women are going to be the bane and the weakness of men, because they have been bred to be hot to trot as soon as they see something sexually appealing. Okay? That was the porn industry. And so this is why they are trying to control reproduction wisely. Reproducing deficient people turns them into predatory people when all the conditions are right. And so utopia without extinction, when you get all your needs met and you can handle the evolution and adaptation when the seasons change. So you're not taking a remedy or elderberry syrup or getting a surgery or taking something to stop or taking an herb or an extract or anything. You're blowing your nose, you're pulling out your shit, and you're dealing with the environmental conditions, and you're sleeping and you're eating and you're taking a breather, you're taking a rest, and you're taking care of yourself. And you're not under the influence, you're not doing drugs or alcohol or chasing after tail. All right? So when you get all your needs met, you can handle evolution and adaptation when the seasons change. You're not constantly causing trauma to your body, developing deficits. That's a utopian society without extinction. With no danger of predators, that's a peaceful, functioning society. You can still have fun, all right? Whatever fun is. For me, I like to read and make stuff, right? And so you can create and develop and learn. You won't have to be in fear of walking down the street. Women and men don't turn into predators and prey. However, children would be the danger because they are in deficit. That's why the children in our society are the ones to watch out for. Because we have children who don't know their boundaries. We have children who are born in deficit with predatory tendencies. And you can see it in their eyes too. When you do look at school pictures of a bunch of kids together. Oh, I've seen it. I've seen the Sanpaku eyes, you could see the deadening, the unemotion in some of these kids' eyes. And you're like, holy shit, that kid is bound to be something predatory when all the conditions are right. It's fucking scary out there. All right? And so children would be the danger because they are in deficit. In a traumatized society, using surgical, medical, holistic protocols on bodies in deficit, you get a society at war with itself and suffering astronomically. You get a society at each other's throats. Children would be the wild card in our society, in a peaceful society. Wild cards don't have to be dangerous, but you don't know what people are facing in utero, and while they grow up, you don't know what will trigger. Parents can be an indicator, but not all the time. Now I get it. I understand the movies. I understand the Georgia Guidestones. And that's in my book too. I talk about the Georgia Guidestones. I understand everything. Once you understand, you can't go back. And you know many are going to suffer resisting what is going on. But you see, somebody has to do something, or else there will be an all-out human extinction. And you see, the government has to understand both sides, predator and prey. And there is a fine line between understanding predators and their victims and then becoming a predator and a victim, which is why you resist, is why when you resist, you turn into the very thing you were resisting, okay? So those that are in resistance to everything that's going on, you're turning into the very thing you're resisting. Watch your friends and family resist death. They end up passing away. They don't want to understand death to save themselves. All they were taught was to resist, cause more trauma to their body. This is why law enforcement has a challenge, because they have to understand the mentality of the population, which is why you get rogue officials occasionally, because the law enforcement turns into the very thing that they're trying to protect the society from, because they understand it and they know they can get money, they can get rich, they have power. It's not that difficult. When you're watching a population and trying to protect them, you also can become the fox in the henhouse. So even to protect yourself, one must understand the mentality of who you're protecting yourself from, but you don't want to turn into them, which is why I don't socialize much, because most people are in a very self-destructive lifestyle, and I'm going to want to fucking save everyone. I know that's me. That's always been me. All right? I know how powerful and influential I can be, and in this environment, causing so much destructive change in people, the energy will encourage your intentions. I'm not trying to be a savior to anyone. I'm not trying to save anyone to death. If I'm around people thinking, I think are destroying themselves, I will try to save them. That's me. So if I'm not around people too much, where I'm feeling like I'm emotionally involved and invested, then I'm not going to do that. But when I'm emotionally invested and involved with people, then I'm going to want to save them. Because how can you be emotionally and invested and involved with people without trying to find a way to protect them? So what's the best thing for me is not to be emotionally invested in people, to be an acquaintance, because that's the freedom. Because once you get into that friendship category where you feel emotionally invested, that's where destruction happens. Literally, that's where destruction happens. You save someone to death or you don't do anything and they just destroy themselves, and then you are suffering because you're watching it and you allowed it to happen. But you have no control. That's the conundrum. That's the shit that people are in. They have set up their own suffering and they've encouraged it and they allow it. And then they become desensitized to it, and then they become the person that causes people suffering. All right? So that's why I don't socialize much. When you care so much, you then have to not care anymore because you have no control over the situation. It's a fucked up situation to be in this society, a society bred on self-destruction, which is why we need a great reset, and it's happening. You don't have to be the one to recycle, but it is your choice. And so you have most of the information to make an educated decision. But I will tell you this, the hospital system and the remedy holistic alchemy system develops predators in our society because of all the trauma. Because once you get used to one trauma, then you will induce more trauma without blinking an eye. Because it becomes a runaway train, it also becomes a power. When you people get a taste of power, like the ring, Golem, it destroys him, but he also was fighting himself, Golem and Smeagol. Because that's what you saw in the Lord of the Rings. He was fighting himself with that kind of power, that ring of power of destruction. And when you have a license to kill systematically, and that's in the medical, holistic, energy healing world, that power corrupts absolutely. Literally, it corrupts the person and it corrupts the society. That's what getting a license in the medical, health, and wellness world. It's a power of corruption, and it's crazy because it's your friends and family and you love them. Yeah, love is a destruction also, which is why we must have lab-created meat. No plant-based meat, lab-created meat. Because eventually even the war of getting our food must end. Okay? So it's not about just eating plant-based protein. No, you need the collagen. You can't get collagen out of plant-based proteins. How do you get collagen? Well, you don't want to get it from something that had to suffer for you. But right now, during this transition, that's what's going to happen until we are secure that the lab-created food supply will have the necessary nutrients, the fatty acid, amino acid, prohormones, and minerals, the collagen. The collagen. And so eventually war must end. Eventually sexual reproduction will be controlled. And this will be interesting to watch. Humanity, you're not an animal, but you have been treated as such. You have the capability to have far more intelligence in the animal kingdom. But once you become an animal to somebody else under their enslavement, you will breed to enslave animals. It's a vicious cycle. Most people cannot get out of because the hormones of love, the destructive hormones of love keeps a cycle in place. All right? And so when you realize this is what's going on, you've been human farmed, you have been experimented upon and had so much fertility caused in you, whether in the hospital from circumcision or all the different hormones and trauma, like literally trauma to the body causes fertility in girls. And then the trauma to the body in boys is the circumcision in the hospital system. And then on a continuous basis, going to the surgical system to get things taken out of you, to get machines doing things to you. That's trauma to the body. That causes fertility. That's trauma. Then it causes deficits. It causes predatory behavior and victims in our society. Literally victims in our society. And so when you realize that's really 99.99% of the population out there and our infrastructure, you're not going to want to be a social butterfly like you have been. You're going to be like, maybe if you even can question that, you might be in question your not only your religion, your politics, and your science dogmas, but your profession. And we have people, and most people in this, and where I live, is they're in the factory industry or they're in the health industry. When your whole society is built on the trauma of people, then you're surrounded. Then where can you go? You can only really be at home. Because once you know this shit, and you know that even when you put yourself in the place of an animal, would you want to be taken care of by you? Pretend you are an animal. Would you want to have someone to dress you up in funny clothing? Would you want somebody to leave you at home 8 or 9 hours a day in a cage or in a pen or even in a house? Would you want to live in a tiny 12 by 12 foot apartment, studio apartment, whether you're a cat or a dog or anything? Oh, but they need a home. Well, somebody's breeding them over here. The reason why they need a home because someone over here is capitalizing on these poor animals. And they have a soul, and they suffer. But when people have been enslaved and treated as animals themselves, that's the only thing they can do is then be a slave owner to animals. But I understand, again, it's a transition. We have been bred to save things, to take care of things, to the detriment of not only ourselves, but to the detriment of even the animals that are being bred. Believe me, when towards the end of with my dog, I was looking back on just everything. And really, if you're going to breed animals like that, see, is there any, I don't, yeah, you'd have to have a very stable society environment and very strong and hardy animals. And they couldn't be really small or so large. Because how would you deal with the evolution that changed? You'd have to know how to take care of yourself with the evolution change. Society would have to be on board with that. The food would have to be different. The way you deal with evolution would have to be vastly different. You couldn't go to the antibiotics or even the V's. Because that needle causes trauma to the body, and then it causes tumors later on when that tumor metastasizes. And then, and how do you know how effective that dog's release process is? And so you see these animals, they blow up because their release process is crap. You can only express the anal gland so much, and then how far do you take it? How much trauma has a dog undergone in the genetic line or in the veterinary system? See, yeah, it's a fucked up system out there. It's fucked up out there. It really is. It's almost like you have nowhere to go because of how much trauma and captivity and enslavement has been bred in humans, and in turn they have done that to the animals and the farm animals, the factory farming. Oh, I'll tell you, it's fucked. I don't care if you're against factory farming, but you have your own little farm, your gentleman's farm, whatever you want to call it. Those animals still live in fear of the axe. They still live in fear. They still have to be enslaved, being bred. And people are breeding dogs to sell them on the open market. That's animal captivity. That's animal enslavement. No different than you being told to have a family and have a bunch of fucking kids. Broad mare, that's what you call them? No, having your own little farm does not make you better than the factory farms. Those animals still live in fear. And so while I am straddling both sides, I get my food at the market, so I don't have to be traumatized by how my food is done, how my food is made. But I know where it's made. Believe me, I've seen the fear in the animals, in the cows, through the Facebook reels. Oh, I've been traumatized knowing this. But at this point, and I have to still feed myself. So I go to the supermarket, get my pork and my steak, and then hopefully down the road, they will develop lab-created meat that will have all of the necessary nutrients that I will get from a farm animal. But I'm sorry, having your own little farm doesn't make you better than the factory farms. If anything, it makes you completely just opportunistic to make it seem like your little farm is much better than the factory farm. No, it's not any different. You are still enslaving animals and breeding them so you can eat them, and they still have to live in fear of that. And they get traumatized as well. And then your kids get traumatized. And then they get desensitized to it. And then they have no problem becoming predators and prey in our society when all the conditions are right, because it was bred into them from a very small child. Having an animal that dies, when people have animals, pets that die, they get desensitized to the death process. And so they expect everything to die. That's turning that kid into a human slave later on. Turning them into a farm animal, to be farmed, to go and have a child. Because that's the only thing they can do, right, is have a child. They don't have anything, the parents don't show them there's more up here. They don't have to be all about their body and all that shit, but you know how that goes. Our society was built on that. That's the depopulation agenda. When you put so much emphasis on the body and the brain is not being used really. It is sort of through regurgitation in the school system. But you know how that goes. Oh, take these antibiotics. Go get a surgery. Go get pregnant. Go get married and go get pregnant. Have 50 million kids. And what's the future for not only that mother, but what's the future for those kids in this society? That's already figured out everything. They don't need most of the people. That's why the Georgia Guidestone says maintain humanity under 500 million. And we have a projected 12.9 billion. Where are all those people going to go? Oh, they will be recycled out of existence. Some faster than others. Yeah. All right, I'm going to go. Think about that.